Welcome back. The title of this mini lecture is The Early Republic, Part 2. We're going to talk a little bit about American politics and life and their histories in the 1790s and the early 1800s. There's a lot that really happens for the U.S. and in the U.S. during this period. So we're going to talk about 5 terms for you to key in on as you go to do your readings and learn more about this time period in the hopes that it'll help you to kind of understand it a little better. All right? So let's get into it. First off, Whiskey Rebellion. All right? Now, this isn't just like a group of guys who are upset about drinking prices or anything like that. The Whiskey Rebellion happens in the early 1790s, and it has to do with the fallout from the Secretary of the Treasury, Alexander Hamilton, who'd issued a report on public credit and an advice meaning that the United States was going to need taxing in order to fund the debts that it had assumed in the time of the early 1790s, right, stemming from the Revolution and all this. And so one of the things that was proposed and goes through is a tax on the distillation of whiskey or liquor. And so you're going to start to see communities that rely heavily on this, particularly out in western Pennsylvania, rebel against the process of collection and enforcement of this particular tax. Now, the rebellion in western Pennsylvania, in and around the city of modern Pittsburgh, gets so aggressive that President Washington is going to be forced to call out the United States military, and he, as well as Alexander Hamilton, will head out there and try to put a stop to this. Now, the Whiskey Rebellion fails. They don't really particularly achieve their objectives. Washington is such a powerful political figure that, his mere presence kind of scares folks away. A bit of, oh, sorry, sir, didn't realize it was you. Didn't mean to offend you. We were kind of mad at this guy. But it really kind of reflects, this question over, the nature of American identity as it relates to rebellion and the nature of the Revolutionary Age itself, because the Whiskey Rebellion is perhaps one of the biggest examples of post-war rebellion, but it's not the only one. It really occurs within a time period of lots of smaller acts of rebellion against governmental forces, be it national, be it state, be it local. All right, number 2, the Federalist Party. Political parties of the 1790s aren't particularly like political parties of the 21st century. No matter what party you ascribe to, or even if you don't, right? Today, I think we can all understand for any party, there's national messaging. If you're a fan of one party and you sign up for something, you're going to get a lot of emails asking for money and, that kind of stuff. The Federalist Party was the party that largely was in power in the first decade or two of the United States' history. Individuals like George Washington, John Adams, and of course, someone like Alexander Hamilton would have considered themselves to be members. A national political party isn't particularly national, and it's not that much of a unified political party in the 1790s. Again, parties of this time and era don't fully look the way that we think because they don't tend to have universal suffrage in the way that we have today, although there's voting right issues, obviously. And so it's hard to coalesce a national party around, who are your voting constituencies, this kind of thing. Generally, though, the party tended to support nation-centered views of government, tended to support national governmental institutions, vis-a-vis state or local, sort of ideas. And this could, in some cases, get themselves into a bit of trouble. All right, number 3, the XYZ affair. This occurs at the end of the 1700s, and this is something that occurs during the time of John Adams's presidency, in which Adams is sending diplomatic mission, individuals over to France to, debate treaties and, debate sort of keeping us out of a conflict, and they're basically asked for a bribe. And the eventual revealing of this and the letters that relate to it and Adams's conflicts with Thomas Jefferson kind of come out with all this in a very scandalous process, hence why it's kind of called the XYZ affair. All right, number 4, the Quasi-War. Now, the Quasi-War was a conflict that the United States engaged in with the nation of France in the 1790s. France was in the midst of their own revolution at this period, and they go through a number of different transitions of government, and they don't like the fact that the United States kind of signs a treaty with the English to trade a bit there, so you have this real difficulty, as America has this, not necessarily that radical individual in Washington kind of at the head, and then into Adams, and you have this real difficulty there. Now, it's mostly a naval conflict, and it doesn't last very long, but it was really a reflection of the kind of international political upheaval of the period of the 1790s and America's position kind of within that. Number 5, you really got to go Alien and Sedition Acts for something like this, and we'll focus in on the Sedition Act specifically. Now, these are passed during Adams's term as President of the United States, and the Alien Act restricts, in terms of, or articulates processes of citizenship, but the Sedition Act, which is the big one, really kind of refers to the question of what form of speech or assembly, but mostly speech, is acceptable in the U.S. And it was, under the Sedition Act, really kind of illegal, really to kind of critique the government or its members. Now, this is opposed strenuously. The Virginia and Kentucky resolutions, hint, hint, play a big part of this. And the opposition to the enforcement of this particular national law contributes to the eventual, development of kind of a canon of legal opposition, which the Confederates are going to draw on when it comes time for the American Civil War to begin. Thanks so much.